Today's theme is what I did on my summer vacation. That phrase immediately reminds me, and probably you, of the assignment we were all given in grade school. For me, that was the late 60s and the early 70s, when we came back after Labor Day weekend. The teacher would write it on the board, and we would take out a sheet of lined paper and a number 2 pencil and get to work. A lot of us had spent most of our summertime playing outside, riding bikes with banana seats, building forts, swimming in the freezing local lake, fishing, going to Lincoln City, and flying kites. By the time we showed up to school, we were tanned and pretty scruffy. The new school clothes our moms bought us helped us look a little better. New blue jeans for the boys and usually a skirt for the girls, but not new shoes for some reason. Our tennis shoes were rarely new, and you could always tell how much fun someone had had just by checking out how worn out their shoes were. New shoes were to be avoided, at least at that age, and at least for my friends and me. You could also tell by scabs. Scabbed knees and scabbed elbows were highly prized and demonstrated strength and heroism. That was the big advantage the girls had by wearing skirts, because with skirts they could easily show off their scabbed knees, while the boys usually had to roll up our jeans, which was awkward, and you had to do it sitting on the ground. Back at our desks, all lined up in a row, the teacher at her large oak desk at the front, the colorful U.S. flag over her right shoulder. We would write out our summer activities. Watching over us were the U.S. presidents, all 37 of them, lined up on the walls like wallpaper borders. Nixon was the president for most of my grade school. He and the other presidents kept guard over us as we wrote. I felt smarter just knowing all the presidents were in the classroom. After writing for 20 minutes, the teacher would ask us to put our pencils down and invite us to share. You had to be brave or proud of your summer to get up in front of the class, or you just wanted to dive into school in front of all your classmates. I was all of those. I wanted to dive into school again, but not for academic reasons. It was just thrilling to see everyone on the first days of school. I usually only saw a few of my classmates over the summer, and I loved getting together again to play and laugh and show off scabs and tell stories. Stories that accumulated over the summer through 4th and 5th grades as I roamed the back country roads where I lived. Along with my 2 close friends, Roy and Valerie, we would wander miles of dusty roads to each other's homes, stopping at our friends' homes in between, if we could, and say hi, get a drink of water. We were 100% free range. Why my mom allowed me such freedom, I will never know, but thank God she did. I had a ball. Our shoes kicked up dust and startled grasshoppers as we found all kinds of treasures on our walks. Old bottles, railroad spikes, hubcaps, roadkill, which is great if you're in grade school. Those adventures ingrained the love of 2 things for me: searching the ground for treasures and my love of lonely places, especially empty fields of golden stubble and rusty railroad tracks as they ran through the green woods. But let's get back to what I did on my summer 2022. This summer, Lisa my wife, began a new chapter in her life. After 15 years, she's leaving Providence and took a new job in Tacoma. For now, we are renting the basement of a house while we close in on something more permanent. I've enjoyed looking for homes, exploring Gig Harbor, using the train to get from Portland to Tacoma. I have to say it felt like the stars aligned when this job and opportunity arrived, or we would never have jumped on it. But as Lisa reminds me, be careful of what you wish for. You might just get it. I'm happy to say I am not giving up my duties here at the church, and Westland will remain my anchor, my actual home, and probably always will, even though I'm retired and my kids are all graduated from high school. I'm sure I will still look forward to summer when the gray January skies hang low over the city and the thoughts of summer adventuring come to my mind. But summers are when adventures can come along in very unexpected ways, and sometimes when the stars align.
Our reading today is from Vanessa Rush Southern. It's a meditation called Wei Wu. And she writes, in her book, Everyday Sacred, Sue Bender tells the story of visiting a remote Zen temple on the southern Japanese island of Kyushu. There, her friend Akai tells how the local farmers for years would walk the long, steep path, arriving after dark and often spending the night with the monks. Now that each farmer has a car, Bender observes, this has changed, and there is no longer time for this leisurely visit. Something about modernity has indeed changed our whole notion of time. Labor-saving devices, fast food, the notion that time is money and not to be wasted, all contribute to an overarching sense that life is escaping from us and we had better rush to catch up to it. Tomorrow, we will run faster, stretch our arms further, F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote, so we beat on, boats against the tide. It doesn't seem necessary that life be lived in such a frenzy. Like so much else, how we treat time is a matter of choice. We can choose to race on against some elusive prize, or we can accept the gifts of the present. We can rage against the person who takes a second longer at the checkout counter, or we can allow him or her that extra beat of time with grace. As for wasting time, it is rarely ever true that time is actually wasted. It is certainly not the case that it is wasted by slowing down or taking time off for leisure or reflection. Quite the contrary, the hours we leave fallow yield the richest harvests. They are the hours from which we awake refreshed. They are the hours from which we almost miraculously seem to emerge with greater clarity, with problems solved, things sorted out, and our creative juices flowing again. It may take cultivating a different mindset to live out this sense of time. It requires us to trust that good work is being done in the quiet of a day or the leisure of a day off. The Taoist tradition has long trusted in this idea. It is embodied in Wei Wu, or action, non-action. Wei Wu is a way of being that is without purposeful motive or striving. There is a grace and a spontaneity to it. It is also an essential part of finding the way. It seems so easy to get caught up in a pace of life that makes us time's slave, to forego the walk to the temple, to rush through today for tomorrow, and to be afraid to leave the fields of heart and mind fallow for even a little while. Yet in these acts of faith, in the enoughness of what we have, particularly around time, the richest harvests are sown. If only we could believe and live as if this were true, we might find ourselves further along the way than a whole lifetime of rushing would have made possible. Like Richard, I remember going back to school in the fall, back when school in Oregon started after Labor Day. Like at Richard's school, one of our first assignments from grade 2 or so through high school English was often some variation of what I did on my summer vacation. We do a little of the same thing with sometimes the same results at our water communion services on Homecoming Sunday. And sometimes, like those essays, it takes a little finessing to get answers that are both true and don't make people feel less than. If your summer consisted of splashing in the kiddie pool in your backyard and you hear other people's extensive orations about their trips to Europe or Alaska, sometimes it makes you feel bad. like you're somehow was sort of less than. And so that's why we do water communion the way we do. Keep it to a sentence and focusing more on the source of our water, oceans, lakes, garden hoses, than the grand adventures that some of us were lucky enough to get to go on. I am back after 6 weeks away, including General Assembly and ministry days, and I have to tell you, probably none of you would be lucky of what I did on my summer vacation, or jealous of what I did on my summer vacation. I didn't really go anywhere. And yet, like Richard says often, the being here now was exactly what I needed. Deese and I got 3 nights of glamping, which is fancy camping, in Bellingham, before I did a memorial service for a former congregant in Blaine. I helped my parents out a bit. I went camping with my friends in Pacific City. We moved Deese's parents up from Arizona to a senior living place near us. And I got to co-officiate my best friend's wedding and all the events and planning that come with such a happy occasion. I have never in my working life taken 6 weeks off. I am beginning the incredible honor of my 8th year here with you, and I've only taken a month of sabbatical. And I usually stretched out my vacation and study leave 2 weeks on and then 2 weeks back. But like many of you, I was tired. Running a church or a business or a family during COVID has been pretty exhausting. Don't get me wrong, I love my job. I feel so lucky that I get to do what I do, to think and to read and to write and to listen and be in relationship with all of you as we strive to be better people, building a world of kindness and justice and compassion. And we all need rest. In a pretty famous TED Talk, Sandra Dalton Smith, MD, talks about how there are actually 7 different types of rest that we need. The first is physical rest. Sleep, which is what we mostly think of when we think of rest, is passive physical rest. And then there's active physical rest, like massage or stretching or yoga. Mental rest, turning your brain off for a little bit. When you're working, she suggests taking 10 minutes or so every 2 hours to walk around or get a snack or just take some deep breaths. Anything that disconnects you from technology or the project you're working on. Sensory rest, getting away from all the lights and sounds and screens and noise that bombards us constantly. Creative rest. Dance in your kitchen. Make some art. Read a book. Practice the guitar. Do something different from what you do all the time. And maybe that will fire up your creative brain. There is a reason that my sermon writing days almost always start with a walk. It's a good time for me to think. Emotional rest. Stop saying yes to people automatically. Give yourself a chance to say, let me think about that. Or even, no. If you're a caretaker, this is especially important. Number 6 is social rest. Lindsay Champion suggests that you make a list of people in your life that you find enthusiastically supportive, kind, and easy to be around. On the other side of that list, make a list of people you find draining, demanding, exhausting to hang out with. And try and spend time with the first group of people and minimize within the realm of social acceptability the time you spend with the second group of people. Finally, spiritual rest. If you've been working hard on something personal, whether that's a goal at work or a personal goal, It might be time to sink back into the rest of the world by focusing on church or meditation or doing something to help others for a while. Getting out of your own head for a little bit. I can't really tell you what I did this summer besides the things I've mentioned. I spent a lot of time at home or on walks or with friends. I took a lot of naps. I took a whole lot of naps. I did a lot more yoga nidra. I read some books and snuggled with my cats. I took lots of photographs. I watched some movies. I didn't really turn my brain off, but I focused on different things for a while. And that was good for me. But I am not the only one who needs a break. We are in this interesting place with COVID where the truth is some of us are still being really careful, but a lot of us have gotten right back into the swing of things. We just wear masks while we do them. It was a terrifying time, for sure. But there were a few good things that came from that rigidly enforced pause for so many of us. Remember how good it felt to stop rushing around for a little bit? To not have 12 places to be on a Thursday so that drive-through eaten in the car on the way to soccer practice was the only way to feed everyone? Remember that hunger to talk with your neighbors because you needed human contact? Can you think of anything from that time that you miss now? And how could you build that back into your life? Something else Richard talked about was the free play time that he had in elementary school and the cool scabs that kids showed off. I read an article recently whose premise was that risky play for kids is inoculative against later mental health issues. It may well be correlation, not causation, but it does seem clear that the decline in children's free play, especially in what might be termed risky environments, giving kids the chance to experiment with building stuff or climbing trees or riding bikes fast, happened at a similar time that mental health issues in children and youth went up kind of drastically. Parents, of course, are rightly scared of their kids being hit by cars in traffic or breaking their neck falling out of a tree. But it turns out that usually kids are fairly good judges of what they can do safely or not. And skin knees are not a tragedy. Rather, they are total currency in the third grade. I remember the incredible difference between my two daughters in this matter when they were kids. Mika was physically shy, and I can relate to that. She didn't like slides, she didn't learn to ride a bike until she was about 9, and she didn't jump. But Marcella, on the other hand, seemed kind of fearless. She would stand up on the arms of the couch and jump off. She liked slides. And the funny thing to me was that she never got hurt. She had this very good sense of where her body was in space and what she could do and what she couldn't. And then Mika learned to climb trees and would climb 75 feet up in the air in the tree behind our house, much to the dismay of her mother, who was afraid of heights. That would be me. And I remember the importance of having some space to yourself when you're a kid. I would sometimes let my daughter walk far enough away in front of me that she couldn't see me and I couldn't see her, just for a few minutes when she was little, because I remember how much I needed that. The idea of being alone, a time where anything was possible. The modern way of doing that, not the modern way, but the way of doing that for adults in some ways is to do something that you're not good at, to try something brand new that you don't do especially well. I went to creative arts camp a few years ago, and I learned how to play the ukulele. And it was so much fun because I was so bad at it, and it was totally okay to be bad at it. And it was really fun to do something that there was no pressure to be good at. I mean, I have a job that I do most of the things fairly well, because if I don't, then that stinks. But it's so good to try things that we aren't good at. I've been pulling out my watercolors, and there's a woman who does creative break time on Friday mornings, and at 9 o'clock, half a dozen people get together on Zoom, and we listen to music, and we paint or draw or color. And man, am I making bad art. But boy, is it kind of fun. It's nice to do something different. It's nice to do something that I don't do well and have that experience of trying something new, of moving my brain in different ways. I took up crossword puzzles fairly recently. I'm really only up to the Tuesday puzzle. I am not a Sunday New York Times puzzle person, but it's okay. I can be bad at it. It's all right. And it's so good to try something that's a little new, that you don't do well yet. What kind of rest do you need? What do you need that is challenging? You could learn to paint or draw. You could learn to paddleboard or play pickleball. Janine, I'm looking at you. You could learn to knit or crochet, work in your garden or swim, or challenge your fingers or your body or your mind in new ways. And this too is a kind of rest, letting your brain think in a different way. I am so grateful to this congregation who supports me with time off, time to rest and refresh and get some new ideas. It will benefit you. I mean, some of you have been listening to me for 7 years now, and I have to go have some new experiences, so I have some new things to talk about. And I know that I am profoundly lucky in so many ways. The Great Resignation is hitting clergy as well. Many of my colleagues are leaving because their congregations don't treat them well. Others are leaving because the realities of parish ministry and parenting without adequate childcare is nearly impossible. And this isn't at all just a problem for clergy. And so, my friends, I invite you to find new ways to rest. From taking a nap to challenging your brain or body in different ways. Let's feel better about using our time in ways that aren't productive. I am not even going to feel guilty that I did not unpack a single box in that 6 weeks that are sitting in my basement. Maybe I feel a little guilty about it. But like the farmers who walked to spend time with the monks, let's focus on what matters. Blessed be, and amen.